Hello. This is my read, response, reflect for module 13. We really only had one guided reading for this week's module. It was titled Chapter 8 Guided Reading Demonstrating Skills in Small Group Settings. I kind of felt like this week's reading was kind of just like a tips and tricks guide to guided reading. So I'm looking down at my notes. Anyways, so first, guided reading tips and tricks. The text should be the text that you choose to use when you're when you're demonstrating guided reading. It should be a text that the students want to read. Like every student, if the students don't want to read it, it's not going to be something that's engaging for them. And if they're not engaged with the text, they're not going to get what the teacher wants from it, or the students aren't going to be able to get what the teacher wants from the text. The text should also be something that the students cannot read it alone, but it should almost be at their level. So the teacher should also allow for independence and help when necessary. The students need to be re-evaluated almost monthly. So that was something that the teacher, I didn't catch her name, but she talked about how when early in her career she wasn't re-evaluating her students, but over time she realized that re-evaluating her students was something that was necessary just because students grow and change so rapidly. So she recommended monthly, and then she kind of gave us like her layout plan, which is really what I took detailed notes on. So for group work, for guided reading, it's something that a lot of planning needs to go into. So she kind of broke it into, I'd say like 4 or 5 categories. First, it's creating the groups themselves. So when creating the groups, they should be based on the readers' levels. So the groups need to all have, the students in the groups all need to be in similar like levels. So for example, emergent readers with emergent readers, transitional readers with transitional readers, early readers with early readers, and so on. The books that's selected for the group, for the guided reading, should be books that are separate from the classroom library, because the teacher will want the students not to have read the books before, because they want in-class discussion to be the first time that they discuss the plot, the theme, the characters, and make predictions about the text. They don't want a book that that half the students have already read all the way through, right? And depending on grade level, the books that the teacher selects for the guided reading should also be targeted to whatever the majority of your students reading development stages. So for example, if you're teaching K through first, you're probably going to pick a book that's more geared towards emergent or early readers, where if you're teaching second through third grade, you're probably going to pick a book that's more that teaches skills more for transitional or fluent readers, right? Another thing that meets another criteria, or the 3 criteria when picking out books for guided reading, is 1, it must be worth the read. Of course, if our students aren't interested in it, they're not going to want to do it. So some questions that we can ask ourselves when picking out books for our students to read: will the kids like it? Will they have good conversations about the text? Will our students relate to it? And is it stereotypical? Obviously, we want our students to have good conversations about the text. That's why we pick them out. We want them to get something from the text, whether it be a good moral, a good skill, something. Will it relate to the student's background? Is it something that they can relate to? And is it stereotypical? Obviously, the stereotypes are something that we want to avoid in our classroom as much as possible. Next, everyone must be able to read the text. This is something that's super important, because we don't want to make a student who's already struggling as a reader to feel like they're already isolated, especially if, kids can be mean. So, the goal is to pick a book that students can read, that 92 to 85 to 98% of your students can read on their own. 92 to 98%, she said that it's such a wide range because it's kind of hard to actually predict how well students can read, just because it's not an exact science. So you might think that a student's higher than they actually are, when it turns out they're not. And third, supporting students' skills Oh, yeah, the book also has to support the student's skill that they're trying to require. So whatever specific skill that the student's trying to get, it needs to be linked to that. So I really like the way that she broke it down. So I broke it down similar in my notes. So she kind of like chunked it together. So for specific skills that they were trying to teach, she kind of gave like characteristics of text to pick. So for example, if you're trying to teach the strategies, or the reading strategies of tracking, using pictures to make predictions, or noting patterns, she recommends using concise placement of text, or books with concise placement of text, pictures that match stories, that are predictable, with predictable text and language structures. If you're trying to teach spelling patterns, self-corrections, chunking words, or paraphrases, or phrasing, she recommends books with text that supports or pictures that supports the text that chunks, or books with text that is chunked into phrases, and books with words before and after the spacing. If you're trying to teach story, or story and character maps, before and after charts, or retelling, she recommends books with longer text, books with balanced narrative and dialogue, and books with familiar topics to the students, so that it's already something that they're able to relate to and like retell in more detail. Next, if you're trying to teach preview or prediction, text features in order to aid comprehension, she recommends, or also if you're also trying to teach writing to show deeper understanding, she recommends books with deeper or more complex books that are interesting to the reader, and text that requires inferences in books of different genres. Additionally, she also then delves into when leading the group. When leading the groups, of course, you need to be well planned out and well thought out ahead of time. She doesn't really say that you need like a specific, like, script or anything, but she does break it into five categories really. It's 4 and like a reminder. So 4 and a reminder. First, directly tell the students what they need help on. And I really like that because I feel like that's something that I didn't have in elementary school. Nobody really told me like, oh, so she kind of, in that section, she gave examples of when she was talking to her students, and one of the examples that I really liked is she just said, I noticed that you start off really well matching the sounds to the letters on the page, but then you kind of trail off and you don't. What's going on there? And I really like that because it started off with a compliment, and then it was like, hey, but you do this bad, but like, let's try to fix it, right? And I like that. So directly telling the students what they need help with is something that she recommends. Then she recommends introducing the text. So depending on what level you're working with, it's going to look differently. If you're working with immersive readers, you're going to have to walk them through and kind of hold their hand when introducing the text, just because they're new readers. She recommends using the same language and language patterns when talking about the book and introducing the book to them, just to get them familiar with it. And of course, you're going to want to revisit the text multiple times. She recommends reading it once on one day, then rereading it the next day. For early readers, you're going to want longer books. You're going to review maybe the first few pages and then kind of let them loose to kind of adventure through the book themselves, and then focus on the pictures and use the pictures to confirm what the text is saying for those readers. Transitional readers, they're going to be a lot more independent than both other groups. They're going to use longer and more complex text. They're going to look at the summaries of the back in the book, the author. They're going to recall any other books that they've read by that author in order to introduce the book to them. Next, you're going to demonstrate the strategy. You are not going to use the text that the students are going to be using, but you're going to use a text that is very similar to the one that they're using. Maybe if you're working with immersive readers or even early readers, you use the first few pages of their book, but never more than that. That's just so that the readers can see like directly with their text, because they're like, new readers. Then fourth, we move on to giving the students the opportunity to read the text independently for themselves and do the strategies for themselves. So for this, you're kind of just going to cut them loose. You're going to let them try it themselves. You're going to remind them over and over, use the strategies, remind them what the strategies are, talk to them about, make sure that they have a before, after, and during talk. Check in with each student individually, make sure that you're supporting when you need to and making sure that you help them when they need to. And then, of course, making she also recommends that you push, like, the context for unknown words, like using context clues for unknown words. I like that, but it can kind of go either way. Overall, this text it didn't really challenge anything that I knew about guided reading. This is very similar to the format that I feel like I used in elementary school and even high school. It's kind of funny seeing, like, what I remember the structure-wise and, like, what I'm learning now. It's pretty parallel. But yeah, this text was really informational. It was really good. I feel like it'll be really useful information in the future. Thank you.